Hello, world language teachers. This is Kara Parker, and today I want to talk a little bit about how do you decide what vocabulary you should be using in the units. So, the first thing is you may have noticed that on Adios textbook we do not include vocabulary lists. And there are several reasons for this, and here are a few why. One, we found that our students were doing better when we did not give them a specific list they had to follow and memorize and know just those words. We found we were actually limiting them. Two, we found that we could use similar units in different levels with different proficiency levels if we would adjust the vocabulary. So we're going to show you how we would do that in a unit. And then three, we also found that all of that vocabulary up front was where we were picking what was important, and it seemed to overwhelm the students. Where we found if we could break it down and do it based on a learning objective, that it went a lot better in the classroom. So let me first show you how to get to this page here that I'm going to use. So let's pretend you just logged in, and you're going to be on the member homepage, which looks something like this for you. Scroll down, go to the teacher's toolbox, which is where we like to put anything and everything else that can help you out. And let's go to planning a unit. And I'm going to click on unit vocabulary. So once there, at the top, you're actually going to see what we suggest to use with the students, and I'll come back to that in a second. So scrolling down here, here is an example. All right, let's make this large. I've picked the Arte Callejero, which is all about street art, to do the example, but this applies to any and every unit you can plan on here. So the first thing is this. Usually I would look at the lesson objective. Here we've got I can explain ideas and messages represented in graffiti. Also, I'd like right in this section here, is just to list what are some of the authentic resources that we're going to be using when they're doing this in class. Next column is go ahead and think about what words or phrases do they know that is going to really help them to accomplish this objective. We're only worried about this one right here and that it relates to it. So let's pretend I'm using this with an intermediate low to intermediate mid proficiency level. Then I would think these are some words that they already know that would be helpful to do that objective. The next column is where I'm going to predict what are the new words and phrases that they should learn with me that will help them get to the objective. Well, if they're going to be talking about ideas and messages in graffiti, then I would think they need to know the word graffiti. And I'm going to assume they probably don't have that already in their knowledge. I think the word represents would also be a good one to have, the word message, and during the lesson, based on what authentic resources I was using, I would say that a positive message, a political message, or a message of protest were three that I was going to focus on. They might have others, but that was the focus of my lesson. So I like to call these like the function vocabulary. Like you've got to have these in order to complete the lesson objective. Then the last one, this last column, is all about what else they might use that is going to enrich what they're talking about and really give it some more like depth. Well, they're talking about these ideas and explaining them. They might connect to some emotions. This is where I might give them something where they can choose from the different emotions, but I wouldn't expect them to know all of the emotions by the end of this lesson. Here are some other words, and then descriptions. They've got to be able to describe it. And this even goes back to they might already know some of these. Like, do I really need to teach the basic colors again? Probably not, but maybe it's time to teach them how to say light blue or dark blue or something along those lines. So this is an example of figuring out what vocabulary you should target in a lesson based on the daily objective. I'll say this too. I wouldn't expect that they master all of this vocabulary during this lesson. If it's the first time they've ever seen these words, then I would expect they're recognizing and using some of them. If it's maybe the fourth or fifth time that they've seen it, that should start becoming more natural for them to use it in their own speech and their own writing. So think about that too. It doesn't mean that you need to give them a vocab quiz at the end of class and say, which ones do you know? But if I give them an open-ended prompt and say, explain the ideas and messages you see in this graffiti picture, then I would expect to see some of this learning represented there. On this page, just a little more to help you, we have a download here that is a blank vocabulary planning sheet. This is great for you to sit, look at the lessons, think about what vocabulary they know and what they need, and also would be great to do with the PLC group. Sit and talk about this together. But the beauty of this is it's not a have to know. This is a planning and prepping them with these, but you might find that students want to use a different word, and there's nothing wrong with that in real life, right? So I hope this is something helpful to help you figure out which vocabulary to teach in a lesson, or I'm going to say to target in a lesson, and explains a little bit more about our philosophy. Happy teaching! Thanks.